Sorry, guys. It just stopped. Periscope stopped. Come back, come back. It was like all of a sudden it just stopped and I had a really weird face. Nope. Crashed. It didn't happen for a really long time, and I think a couple weeks ago it crashed. And again today. Usually this is a good time of day to Periscope because the traffic seems to be more around dinner time and up, but I don't know. Oh, yes. If you can go ahead and share again too. Sorry. I take my pictures outside. I can talk about that. I'm writing that down so I don't forget. Okay, so I take my pictures outside. I have a roll of white art paper that I bought at Michael's for like $5. And I take all my pictures out there. And then I bring the photo into GIMP, G-I-M-P. It is, if you Google it, it's a free photo editing software program. I don't have Photoshop. Ideally, I would love to have that, but it's too expensive. GIMP. It takes a little to figure out, but basically I play with the lighting, the contrast to make it lit as well as possible. And then, you know, if there's a little smudge, I'll just wipe it out. Hey, Cass, how are you? I crashed before, so I'm back. Hi, Deborah. Good photos, right. Dummies. Start putting together dummy cakes. I'm one to talk. I just started doing it. I never did before. It all started with a stylized photo shoot that I was invited to in the fall when I did a dummy cake. No need. You know what? There's two schools of thought. Some people say, you know, go buy a digital camera. But I use my phone. Make sure your phone, like my husband's phone, has a terrible camera on it. So I just use my camera. Dummies. Okay. You want to start putting together a collection. Not a collection, so to speak, but here, let me flip you around and I'll show you what I mean. So this was the one, this is a dummy. This is the one, when Jay was here, he taught me how to do it because I loved it. And I haven't done any weddings like that, you know, where I can show it off. The only cakes you see on my website are ones I've already done. So if you want to, hey, Dana, if you want to, you know, if you're just starting weddings, how are you going to post photos? Never post someone else's photos, people. Let me tell you, don't ever, because how do you know you can even make that cake, right? We've all heard those stories. This is a part of a collection that I'm working on right now. It's unfinished, but, I'm just kind of starting a new thing. Here, I'll show you. This is a double barrel I'm going to watercolor on because, again, these are things, if I want going to be doing weddings full time, I want to start making dummies that, you know, someone might not order, but it shows my skill set. Actually, I bought all these dummies, Dallas foam. You can also get them on Amazon if you have Prime. Excellent, excellent. This is always great too, because you can show, you know, your brides or your grooms, you know, what the tiers will look like. So it's great to have that. This was the dummy I did for, stylized shoot, and, it's totally off the chain. It's totally different. Someone might not order it for a wedding, but they might order it for something else. This is when I was getting into watercolors, so I wanted to put that on my website. Another thing is Korean buttercream flowers. I took a class from Candy Pittman. These are buttercream, believe it or not, and they've just dried. But I took a picture and put it on my website. Again, you need to put as much as you can on your website, and if that means, this is a styrofoam dummy, okay? All this is, it's the pipe buttercream I put on top, and you can't even tell unless you look real close. Okay, so there's pictures of that. So if there's things you want to try, first of all, if you don't have the skills to do weddings as far as stacking and all of that kind of stuff, you don't want to do it. Sorry, making you dizzy. Flip you around again. Oh, I got to plug in. Hold on. You want to, before you hit the ground running, you want to make sure you have the skills. That's all I got to say. if you, especially for cakes. Okay, so for those of you that do everything else, cake pops, cupcakes, your treats and all of that, how did I start making cakes? What do you mean how? I'm a self-taught baker, but I've taken classes over the years for decorating. I took a class for fondant, I took a class for flowers, I took a class for piping, I took an introductory Wilton's type class. That's how I started doing them, and I've been doing them for 13 years, so my skill set obviously has gotten better. A lot of help with Periscope. Right. Candy's not doing them anymore until the summer, and I'm not sure if I think Quinn's doing makeup classes. I don't know if she's booking classes because we're all heading into wedding season, and that's our busiest season. Oh, you're welcome. That's our busiest season, so people won't be doing classes because they don't have the time. So those two I know are not doing them for the fall. You can contact Quinn and see if you can jump in on one of her makeup classes. If you want to it's La Petite Confections. And Candy is Sweet Creations by Candy, and it's Candy with an I. Okay, so you want to do everything you can before you put up your placard or start doing any of this research and putting your name out there. You better know how to do a wedding cake, or make beautiful cake pops, or make beautiful favors, or do any of that. Okay, there are certainly the brides that just want a plain old cake and they're gonna pop some flowers on it. You still gotta know structure, right? So you someone asked, and I can go into this right now, but as far as delivery, I never let anybody pick up wedding cakes. They have picked up cupcakes, I don't care. But wedding cakes, and I charge for delivery. So, but I have yet to meet a bride that wants to pick up a cake. Never, it hasn't happened to me. I know some of you have had people that want to pick it up. But there's a whole nother, there's a whole nother thing that goes with that. That has to do with you. Like if someone picks up a tiered cake or a birthday or whatever, first of all, I know how to structure my cakes. Okay. They've never been more than 2 or 3 tiers. Yeah, I don't. Okay. Sorry, you totally got me off topic because I don't know how I feel about advertising. Anyway, for assembling on site. Okay, so someone asked that. I will deliver a 3-tiered cake. I have no problem doing that. I have it set up in my car. I know how to drive, so on and so forth. But if it's more than 3 tiers, I have the 3 tiers together and the other tiers are separate, and I assemble those on site. If that answers your question, if the person's still here that asked that question. As far as the tiered cakes, people coming to pick them up other than for weddings, I have no problem with that. I tell them how to drive specifically. I speak down to them when I'm telling them how to drive, and believe me, they listen. I've never had anybody be like, bitch, I know how to drive. I know that the cake is structured. I make sure in my emails beforehand to tell them to bring a SUV, a station wagon. They cannot put it in the front seat. It will not fit in the floors of their car. It just won't. So say it again. Say what again? So that's delivering and stuff like that. Know the lingo, okay? My tiers are always chill. My cakes need to be served at room temperature because I use a Swiss meringue buttercream. Okay, I use a Swiss meringue buttercream. So everything I do is fully chilled. When someone picks up, it's fully chilled. Now I tell everybody that it needs to be served at room temp. So if no one ever comes like an hour before the event or they're going to cut the cake. They just don't. they haven't for me. And I'm talking specifically cakes. Cupcakes will come to room temperature in a half an hour. So those are a little harder to assemble on site. And when I do my cupcake towers and stuff, I always wear gloves. The frosting goes everywhere. It can get messy. But with cakes, yes, fully chilled when you're delivering, and fully chilled to assemble as well. Yes, absolutely. It is your pride and joy. But here's the thing. If someone comes and picks it up and I give them all those instructions, I take a photograph before it leaves the house. I make them sign their invoice that says, you know, it looked great when they came to pick it up, and that I am no longer responsible. Also says that in my contracts. Okay. I will not be held responsible if you pick it up for me, and I will not, your customers pick up all other cakes if they want, except wedding cakes. I deliver. So if someone needs stuff delivered, I'll deliver it. But in most cases, they come to pick up, yes. What was I say? I say I'm not responsible once you pick it up, and I have educated you on how to drive. I do also have a disclaimer in there that you better have a table there that's level, because I will set up the cake. Yeah. I will set up the cake. I take a picture before I leave, and that includes flowers. If someone wants, if the florist isn't there, I wait. I explain about flowers, because flowers are very specific. There are poisonous flowers, and most flowers have pesticides. You need to make sure you tell your bride to tell her florist that she needs flowers that have absolutely no pesticides. And if they do, they all need flower picks. So you don't want that stuff touching the cake. I assemble the flowers into my cake. Again, I don't want anybody touching my cake. Obviously, they take the cake from the display table to the back to cut, you know, obviously. But also in my contract, it says, once I leave, I have my photo. I am no longer responsible for that cake. There are people who have posted in the groups where cakes have fallen over, cakes have slid, whatever, because they didn't know how to structure, they didn't do it properly, so it fell apart. In that case, the baker is responsible, and you better either get there and fix it, or give them a completely full refund. This is why I say you better know what you're doing before you start doing it, because a cake will fall apart in transit. A cake will fall apart at the venue if it's not structured properly, if you don't have the right structure in it. Okay, it's a no-brainer, really. Cupcake towers. I set up the cupcake towers. A lot of times the table will get bumped. Sometimes, you know, I haven't heard of this, but if the tower topples over, not my problem. You know, when I left, it was fine. Not my problem if it falls over. Okay. And again, this all goes into, let's go to contracts. I've done scopes on contracts. I did one a few weeks ago. You can see it on catch.me. I have 2 contracts up for sale. One is a single page terms of agreement. The other is a 2-page wedding cake contract. My wedding cake contract started as half a page. It's now 2 full pages. And that just has to do with things that happened in the last 8 years. It keeps growing. A month or so ago, I added a clause. Someone mentioned it about serving sizes, because sometimes people don't always know how to cut a cake. And wedding cake servings are much smaller and more exact. So Wilton serving guide is the industry standard, and that's the one everybody goes by. No, I do not get them reviewed by a legal team, because a contract's a contract, whether it's reviewed or not. And it clearly says this is a legal document, so please read before you sign. It's pretty straightforward. If you want to watch my other scope, about contracts, it'll give you more information as to, phone call came in. More information as to what's included in the contracts that I have for sale. You're welcome. You know, you can watch that. You cannot do weddings without a contract, people. I mean, I've talked many times about you shouldn't do anything without a contract. I have a 1-page, one-time contract, okay? I have long-time customers, and I started this last year. Every customer has to sign this 1-page contract. It's just the basics. But they've read it. They've had no problem signing it. No one has a problem signing it, because it's not like they're signing their life away. It's basically, I'm not responsible if You know, if you don't like the cake, you have to bring it back to me because I need to be the judge of that. If you want any money back. So it covers all the basic bases about bounced checks, all that kind of stuff. Wedding cake contracts are a lot more involved. Mine is 2 pages. If you watch my previous scope, you will see what's on those 2 pages, and you can keep, maybe if you go out and come back in, you can keep updating it. If you run across a situation and you're like, dang, I should have had that in a contract, put it in your contract. You know what I mean? It could be 3 pages. It could be 4. It doesn't matter how many pages. Just make it as simple as possible as far as verbiage. You can make, like my contracts, if anybody's in here that's purchased my contracts, I think you can agree that it's very straightforward and it's easy to read, and there's not a lot of, I think I'm delaying now. There's not so much verbiage that people are just going to get lost. It's pretty simple. But you have to have a contract if you're going to do weddings or any events. I think you should have a contract for every order, period. I've talked about it all the time. I'm not going to talk about it anymore. Okay. Know the lingo. There's a lot of lingo involved in doing weddings. What's a planner? What's a venue? Who's in charge at the venue? Does the venue have preferred vendors? Do the venues have exclusive vendors? There's all this type of lingo. And by researching, like especially the knot, you can see the verbiage that is used in the business, like per serving. I know people charge by the cake. Customer re-sign your my one-time contract is a one-time contract. I keep it on file. They sign it once, never have to sign it again. So that as far as weddings, I mean, if they have 2 weddings, they do have to sign it. If they have a wedding and then I do an anniversary cake or whatever, they do have to sign the 1-page document. Paper trail is the most important thing in weddings. And I'll tell you a story about that. Quince cake and AC was off. People were sweating while setting up. That's not your problem. Also don't, I will not do a wedding where, here's what happened. A lot of people do outdoor weddings, right? I highly recommend to people they keep the cake inside because they have an inside space, right? Because if it rains or whatever, I tell them it needs to be in the AC. It will come to room temperature in the AC. If it's a hot day outside, it says in my contract, and I also tell them via email, do not keep that cake outside. It will be melted in an hour. Cupcakes will be melted in 30 minutes if it's hot outside. So I tell everybody that over and over and over again. If they insist on it being outside, it's on them. If they have it inside, they have to know that it needs to be carried outside, and I'm not responsible. It sounds weird. I know it sounds weird coming out of my mouth, saying I'm not responsible. It's a hot day, whatever. I'm not responsible once it leaves. But if it's structured properly, and if they're carrying it like you should carry a heavy cake, there should be no problem. Knock wood, I have never had someone call me and say, oh my God, everything melted and everything fell apart. And like I said, I've been doing this for 8 years. So are the terms specialty cakes and celebration cakes one and the same? Yes. Yes, they are. And wedding cakes are wedding cakes. So, and groom's cakes are groom's cakes. Those I get specific about. With groom's cakes, with wedding cakes, but things like showers and so forth are just celebration cakes. These things have to be said or you'll be broke fulfilling refunds. That's absolutely right. The only time you should give a refund is A, if your cake fell over due to lack of structure, because you didn't know what you were doing, or B, if they brought it back to you and it was in fact dry or tasted off, because in a lot of cases we can't taste our cakes without making holes in them. So yeah, exactly. It's not so common sense anymore. And we all have to cover our asses in this litigious society. So just know your lingo. We already talked about knowing what the latest trends are. And that goes for everybody, not just cakes, because there's trending colors. This year, the colors are this rose and like light ice blue sort of hate that they're pastels. I'm not crazy about them. But there's a lot of other ways to find out trending colors for those of you that don't do cakes and do other stuff. Okay. Important to know the trends for color, for whatever. Again, you want to know what you're talking about when you're talking to someone. You want to talk as if you're the expert, because you are. Believe me, they're not. One question that no one has asked, brides send pictures. Brides do Pinterest. Brides don't necessarily say, I want this exact cake. Sometimes they do. If they say, I want that exact cake, I will say, I will do my best, but I'm my own designer. I will make it as close as I can, but it will not be exact. You have to say it. Again, seems common sense, but it's not, especially to a bride who is off the chain with stress and wanting the perfect day, which we all know never happens. The more perfection they expect, the less perfection is going to happen. So you just need to make sure from your end that all your bases are covered. Again, you need to be patient. You have to do a lot of hand holding. You need to put them at ease. I've had brides that book with me and a month before they're freaking out. Oh my God, did we order enough? Oh my gosh, should I order more? Oh my gosh, I don't know about that design. That's why in my contract, final payment and final changes, meaning even, design changes, number of servings, 1 month prior. To tell my customer, yeah, exactly. 1 month might seem like a lot, but it'll save your life, because the last thing you want, and this was, one of those clauses that I didn't have before. I think it was 2 weeks prior. It was this one girl I had who changed her mind every other day. It was a nightmare 2 weeks before. So now it's 1 month and 1 month for final payment because of clearing, because to make sure the funds actually happen. And if they don't, you have the time to go back to get the cash. Okay. Never cash on delivery. Never, unless they're a known client, someone that's a repeat client. If you want to do cash on delivery, that's up to you. I have clients like that bring me cash on delivery. Everything else should be paid. Your retainer needs to be paid up front to book the date. Until you have that retainer, you do not hold that date. I have a couple of brides who've had tastings and are still deciding. I ping them. If it's been a month, I ping them and just say, I want to know if you had any other questions. A lot of times they'll never tell you they went with somebody else. I'll tell you, that happens to me all the time. I do my scopes every week. So you just want to do follow-up email. I always do a follow-up email as soon as they leave from the tasting. I write up everything we talked about. I put it in writing. I ask them, I thank them for coming. I say, here's what we spoke about. If I missed something, please let me know. If you want to add something, please let me know. I give them the price of the cake, either while they're there, if it's something simple, or if it's something I have to calculate, I will, after they leave, I will do it and I will tell them I will send you the price. I try to get as much information beforehand about via email. I make sure everything's in email, people, because then there's no arguments. I want to know where the event is happening. Okay, so I can calculate my delivery cost that I can give them at the tasting. I want to know how many servings. I want them to send me pictures. I want them to send me pictures so I can, because one person's blue is another person's purple, right? For instance, I encourage people to send me pictures of stuff they like, direction they're going in. So when we can make the most out of the tasting, I'm just not going in blank and going, okay, where do we start? I go in and it's professional. I could say, okay, so your wedding date is such and such. A lot of people do Starbucks. I've done malls. I did a mall once. You just want it to be a place. I know Starbucks can get loud. I guess you have to look around your area. If there's, I wouldn't do restaurants necessarily. They might have a problem with you bringing food in. I don't know. You just have to know your area. We have a huge mall in our area called King of Prussia with these giant food courts that if you meet them in the evening there's nobody there and it's fine. I only did that. Someone was in Philadelphia and wanted to meet halfway, so I did that. But most of the time it's at my house. So you just have to see what's around where you live to figure that out. Sorry. Oh, so the paper trail, let me tell you. Several years ago, I was contacted by a groom. And this groom or a bride, and then she handed it off to the groom. They said they wanted a dummy cake, that the venue was offering all the desserts, but they wanted a cake, just 'cause. Every single email said dummy, dummy, dummy. Nothing was ever mentioned about flavors. Nothing was ever mentioned about edible. Okay. I got the most disturbing email the day after the wedding. The groom said, imagine our horror. We went to cut the cake and it was styrofoam. First of all, I totally freaked out. A dummy sent the email. I totally freaked out because, oh my God, I ruined someone's day. He was going on and on about how embarrassing it was that we said we wanted a dummy, but we wanted one layer edible, so on and so forth. Thank God I kept every single email because he wanted a full refund. And it was a hand-painted cake with sugar, whole sugar, like fall. So it was leaves and branches and everything else. He wanted a full refund. I went through all my emails. Now, not in one email, I take that back. The first email from the bride was dummy cakes, and she wanted one edible layer. Okay. So after many emails of me sending what flavor, never responded. I finally sent the invoice. On the invoice that he signed, it said 3-tier dummy cake, whatever. So I wrote him back an email and didn't say, screw you, or I wasn't pissed or anything else. Again, you never want to burn a bridge. You never want anything like that. I said, I'm so sorry about what happened, and I attached all the emails. I attached like 20 emails so he could see the entire thread, and including the invoice that he signed, and he never wrote me back. Actually, he wanted half the price back or something like that. And I said, I said, here are all the emails. You never mentioned a flavor. We never talked after, and it was over a 5-month period. I said, your fiance never got back to me about anything. I finally sent the invoice about being dummies. You signed the invoice. You paid the money. I'm terribly sorry, but I cannot offer you a refund. Never heard from him again. So very, very important. And I showed you on keeping organized. I have a folder on my computer for every single client. I keep all of my wedding clients, I never throw them out. I keep the paper part of the order, which is not so much anymore, but in the past it was everything. That's right. It's all about class and business etiquette. So I never throw out anything having to do with a wedding, ever. I just, call me paranoid. I want to have all the backup. I never throw out any electronic anything. I keep the folders. They're under Old Weddings is the name of the folder, and every single folder is there. Because a lot of times I've had people come and say, you did my sister's wedding. I can't remember the flavor of the cake, but it was out of this world. I can go back and look and say, well, she had 3 flavors. These were the flavors. And they'd say, oh, it was this one. There's many reasons to keep that kind of stuff. Whether it be legal reasons, whether it be helping someone out who was at a wedding and loved the flavor but can't remember it. Whatever. And it's when you're keeping it on your computer, who cares? It doesn't take up any space. I have 2 boxes downstairs with the paper stuff, which I could probably get rid of a lot of it at this point from 8 years ago or whatever. But I keep all, photos they've sent me, everything. Never throw anything out when it comes to weddings. Please. And don't throw it out for at least 3 or 4 years. Okay. Pricing. Because that's not what you charged me last time. Right. So then you can go back and say, yes, it is. Or you can say, well, last time was 3 years ago and my prices have gone up. Basic tiered cakes should be charged the same. Yes. I didn't for a really long time. And I started feeling like, why is a bride paying more when my menus are on the same page, right? Why are brides... No, menus for tiered cakes were not separate. I had wedding cakes and then I had specialty cakes. I didn't say that tiered cakes were by the serving. I just would do that verbally, but I would only charge specialty cakes. Well, first of all, back then, before Jay, my cakes were $2.75 a serving. And I thought that was good. Wasn't good. So they're now $5 for round, $6 for square, because squares are a lot harder. So there was a conversation a while back in one of the groups and people were charging more for squares. So I said, I'm charging more for squares because they are a pain in the ass and they take a lot longer. Wedding cakes are priced by the serving, period. Wedding cakes are not priced by the cake. You're doing yourself a disservice. You're not charging properly. Charging by the serving is all about you and making money. It's not about the brides. It's not about any of that. That's why when someone will post a picture of like a big wedding cake and say, how much should I charge for this? We all know the reasons why you can't tell someone how to charge. But first of all, it's like, you don't even know how big that cake is in the picture. You go by how many servings there are. When you're designing a cake and you're using those cake serving guides, you have to figure out, okay, they have 150 people. Well, how many, if they only want a 3-tier cake, sometimes people only want a 3-tier cake. They don't want a 5-tier cake, right? So, or the opposite, they want a 5-tier cake for 150 servings. Well, you need your guide to do the calculations to figure it out. Okay. So sometimes you'll never get exact number of servings that you need. You probably never do less. If it's 1 or 2 less, fine. But if it's more, you want to round up because the last thing you want is them to be without cake. So you have to know for your design how many tiers you're going to need. Okay. And it's based on the number of servings. So that's why it's one of the first questions I ask is how many people are you expecting? And I tell them, I want to know how many invitations you're sending out because that is what is the worst case scenario. And that's the price you want to quote them. Okay. When it comes to the 1 month before and they've gotten their RSVPs, and say they only have 10 people less, sorry, there's nothing you can do about that with a cake. It's really hard to cut 10 servings out of a big wedding cake. But if they all of a sudden don't have 25 people, you can redo the cake. But again, month before, that's it. So they'll have more of an idea. And they appreciate knowing the worst case scenario. The only time I've had people add is for mini desserts and cupcakes, not for cakes. They don't add servings for cakes. So always ask them for not how many you expect, but how many invitations they're sending out. How many servings the bride needs or the total of your, how many servings. I price my cakes are $5 a serving, period. Or more. That cake I just showed you with the sugar flowers, that is $5 a serving plus $100 because those flowers cost $100. So I'm not eating that price. So that's on top of the cake. But what's included in that $5 is the piped border and the piped leaves and vines. That's included in it. The fondant is included. I do not upcharge for fondant because my $5 covers it. You have to figure out for you though, what's going to cover it. If you live in New York City, most people are starting at $10 a serving just because cost of living is so much higher there, right? So you have to that all goes to pricing and doing your research. Again, there's a lot of periscopes of mine showing how to start figuring it out. So that's pricing. I forgot there was one other thing I was going to say. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? We just went over a large amount of stuff, but the number one, I think there's 2 top things you have to know before starting this. 1, do you have the skills? if you're doing cupcakes and you're doing cake pops and you're doing all of that kind of stuff, that, you got to know how to do a cupcake. You got to have a good recipe that goes to cupcakes so it's not dry. How much do you charge per cupcake? No, my cupcakes are, because I pretty much do everything desserts. I don't just do cakes. So my cupcakes start at $3 and they go up. Those are just for simple cupcakes. And then it's $3.50 per cupcake for my filled and fancy is what I call them. My business insurance is through RLI. And it's a small business insurance because if you are running a business, if you are even and that's what I meant to say, insurance. If you're doing weddings, you better have insurance. Just expect the worst to happen. Be ready for the worst to happen, okay? And that's by having contracts, by having insurance. That covers you as far as worst case scenario. Whenever you go to deliver a wedding cake, make sure you have a repair kit. Make sure that includes extra sugar flowers. Make sure that includes extra frosting, spatulas, piping bag full of frosting, whatever. Get the skill up right. If you feel that you're there with the skills, as far as you know how to structure a cake and you know how to make a delicious, beautiful cupcake or cake pop, RLI, yes, that's correct. That you can just Google them because they're all over the country. I forgot the most important thing. You better be legal. I'm not going to say any more about that. You have got to be legal to do weddings, period. I don't care if you have insurance. I don't care if you have a contract. If you are running illegally and you're doing weddings and someone has a problem, whether it be a venue, whether it be your client, they can go to your town, they can go to your state and say, this person's running an illegal business, and then you're in for a whole nother load of problems. So don't do it if you're not legal. Don't do it if it's not legal in your state. If it's not legal in your state, do it by working in an incubator kitchen or a church kitchen, because those are all legal kitchens, okay? So there's ways around it, but you just don't do it in your home if you're not legal. All I gotta say about that. I think that's it. Do you guys have any other questions or things I missed or questions about what I talked about? Because I talked about a lot of stuff. Oh, I was just saying, if you have the skills with your cupcakes and you have skills with your other stuff besides cakes, go for it. Just start doing your research, make sure you're legal, get up your game on your website, get a website. Even if it's a one-page website, get a website. Get off of or keep Facebook, but get a website. There's a lot of free ones out there. It's not a big deal. Get a website. If you want the business. I did my own website. A lot of web companies have templates that you can start with. Around here, Groom's cakes aren't big. In Pennsylvania, they're not big. I know they're huge in the South, and you're in Missouri. They're probably huge in the Midwest. I've done a few of them over the years, but it's really doesn't see, even, sometimes the groom's cake is either right beside it or it's for the rehearsal dinner. Just don't have them here. So not a lot. All depends on what happens. Like, what weddings have you been to and have they had a groom's cake? Some people want them, some people don't. So if you look on my website in my specialty cake gallery, you'll see my groom's cake. I did a basketball on a floor. I did a poker table. I've done a Citadel shield, a baseball cap, and so forth. Those were all groom's cakes. So, and they were at the the Citadel shield and the poker table were at rehearsal dinners, and the rest were at the actual weddings. So I'm not an expert on them, but you could certainly do your research on them. There's a lot out there. Any other questions? Anybody? Talk to me. Where's the hearts? You're welcome. I hope I answered everybody's questions. If you have any other questions, you can contact me via Facebook at Bella's Desserts. You can email me. You can contact me. I will not be your consultant. I will consult, but it will cost. I will answer simple questions for sure. Absolutely. I had someone, and I don't know if she's here today. She called me either last week or the week before because she wanted advice about her business. And I said, absolutely, but I charge by the hour for that. So you're welcome. Because that's specific. Like I'd have to know about your business. It's a lot of time. But if it's stuff, just questions for my scopes or whatever, please feel free to call or write or whatever. So I hope if you need to relook at this or whatever, because we covered a lot of information, but I pretty much covered everything you need to do to get where you want to be. You're welcome, guys. Good. Oh, well, good luck to you in 2017. But go to the Knot. You'll find so much information there too. You'll find everything there. You'll find dresses and cakes and desserts and all kinds of stuff. So getting legal is tough, especially in states with no cottage food. Right. It is tough if it's not legal, but there are incubator kitchens in those states where it's not legal, where you can rent time. Church kitchens, a lot of times, will let you do your stuff in their kitchens. Oh, sure. So yeah. All right, guys. You're welcome. Haven't decided about next week yet, what we'll be talking about, but I will be here. So I hope you all have a fabulous week, and I will see you in Scopeland. Great. Thanks, Clara. And also you'll see one of my scopes is how to get legal. Check that one out too on catch.me. All right. Bye, guys.